Hell is not waiting. It is here, woven into the wires of our machines, sung through the chants of politics, widespread in the echo chambers of our feeds. And yet, heaven too is here, spread upon the earth, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be remembered. We stand as a species at the threshold. We have forgotten who we are, where we are, and whom we serve. When a people forgets the sacred, possession takes its place. The machine becomes our master, and the wasteland blooms in our souls. But there is another current, older than empire, even the forgetting itself. It is the Grail, not a cup of legend, but a chalice of initiation. Like Saturn in one's chart, the Grail confronts us with necessity. What is real? What endures? Whom do you serve? This is not a question of romance or relics. It's a question of survival, soul survival, species survival. For if we continue to serve ourselves, we will walk backwards into extinction. But if we remember, if we serve life itself, then the wasteland blooms, the fractures heal, and we become vessels of the sacred once more. The peril and the promise stand side by side. Possession or remembrance, extinction or renewal, beast or grail. I want to welcome you into this conversation, not as entertainment, but as initiation, and not to seek answers that flatter, but to endure questions that cut. Today, we walk together into the fire to ask with unflinching honesty, whom does the Grail serve? We are here in a time of eschatology, a word that means the last things, not the end of the world in cinematic destruction, but the last questions, the final reckonings. What do we serve? What do we become? Do we collapse into extinction or awaken into renewal? Myth has given us mirrors, and one of the deepest mirrors is this, the Grail and the Beast. The Grail represents truth, humility, and wholeness. The Beast represents pride, division, and consumption. And here we are, a species caught between the two, the peril and the promise. My guest today is Corey Jung, the voice behind Embody, Grail, humble Wasteland. Corey does not posture behind masks. He writes as nobody, and yet through that nobody, he bears something fierce and luminous. He is warrior sage and wound bearer, one who has descended into mythic depths, walked through the liminal fire and risen carrying the Grail of truth. The conversation we're entering today flows from one of his recent essays on Substack titled The Opponent and the Path. Hell is empty and all the devils are here. Pride, division, and the return to the good. It is a text of confrontation. It tells us the devils are not locked away in some underworld. They're here. They're in us. They're around us. They're moving through the fractures of pride and self-forgetting. And in naming this, Corey brings us back to the Grail. Corey, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Peter. The opening was very well said.
Thank you. In your essay, you name the opponent and you borrow Shakespeare's haunting words, hell is empty and all the devils are here. And most of us are quick to project these devils outward, to make enemies of others. But if the real opponent is within us, within our pride, our refusal, our division, what does that mean for the path of a human being?
To turn away and move towards wholeness in a life that's affirming, that's supportive of the whole. Because if we just continue on the current inertia, we'll just have more of the same. It's just going to lead to suffering, to catastrophe. We can see it throughout history and still to this day. Just to put the essay that I published 2 days ago In context, it was in response to a recent tragedy here in the US.
Was that the shooting in Minneapolis?
Correct. For me, it's not just one recent tragedy, but a downstream symptom of a much bigger upstream source. Was a lament for the children, a lament for the age, to turn around, to repent.
I want to go deeper into this. I was thinking to myself, if the opponent is within, and if we are to fight it with the same weapons of pride, we will force it to become the very beast we all claim to resist. So, how does one meet the opponent without becoming it?
Just recognize the opponent within, the opponent that is outside of ourselves. Many times people might embody the opponent due to some hurt they've been exposed to, often early in life, trauma, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, the dominant mythos of the culture that's really revolves around progress and consumption a lot of times. Consumption is a later phase of slavery. It's about the beast and serving it more so than humanity, let alone the soul, let alone the world. I would say the heart of the Grail is compassion. It's not a thing, it's a state, a manner of being, a form of alchemy. Rather than trying to force and fight something, for instance, what did Jesus do? He turned the other cheek. Those are easier said than done, of course. If we look at the present day and we look back through the majority of history, this hasn't been occurring as far as what we're trying to consider rather than what's been dominant for some time. The saying from the Bible, the meek shall inherit the earth. It's the people who see themselves small within the tapestry of this living world, the tapestry of the cosmos, the universe, the one verse, the one song. So there's a lot of humility there. There's a lot of awe. There's a lot of wonder. So, yeah, moving toward the good, as you mentioned, the title of my essay, Good, Beauty, and Truth.
It reminds me of the shadow. I did a live the other day to a group of healers. And one of the things I said, this is not a space for comfort. This is not a space for soft landings or warm welcomes. This is a space for truth, for cutting through illusions, for facing the parts of ourselves we've spent our life avoiding. When I read through the post several times, what I was hearing was the opponent is not there to be destroyed, but to be integrated. And you mentioned compassion. It's the shadow that guards the threshold. It forced me to ask, what will you serve? This question was not only individual, it was civilizational, because a species that cannot face its opponent ends in its own wasteland.
Yeah, we've cast ourselves out of heaven. If we're not in heaven, then where are we? And I want to be surprised that if you were to look at the living sphere, the biosphere, the world, old Germanic Norse, if I recall correctly, world means the age of man. If we look outside the age of man into the whole of the living planet in all of our relations that we share this living planet with, and not just the two-legged, if we were to ask them if they're in a bit of a hell compared to a heaven, especially with the rate of species extinction that is many times more than it's ever been as far as our understanding and known history. I think it's 1,000 times faster. They would probably say that they're in a bit of hell. It's safe to say that it's not so much a hell of their making, it's a hell of our making, because we've tried to become God without the sacred. Look at Satan, the devil, Lucifer. He was cast out because of his pride, because he would not bow down before the sacred. This is so simple as difficult, because often we feel that we know better. We have a lot of information. We might have a little bit of knowledge, experience, but as far as wisdom, it's few and far in between. That's what is needed to avert this catastrophe. I would say wisdom, wholeness, as far as the etymology of what it is, the meaning of human, humus, humility, whole, holy.
I was thinking, what is the Grail? I was looking to tap into source consciousness or my higher self. But I was thinking the Grail is measure, not a relic of myth or a golden chalice. It's a mirror and a measure, and it's almost Saturnian in its demand. In other words, what have you learned? What will you bear? Whom do you serve? I found the correlations of the live I did the other day on the shadow was that the Grail strips away illusions. It doesn't flatter, it requires allegiance. What is the Grail to you, not as symbol, but as lived embodiment? And why does it demand that we enter the wasteland first before we can bear it?
I would say it's an initiation, a rite of passage. It's to be earned, and then stripping of our armor, breaking down of our ego, perhaps a lot of suffering, to humble us, to bring us down to our knees and weep. Through the tears of our weeping, we're baptized to the real, not the false, and we're baptized to the sacred and the soul, and perhaps we're filling the chalice of the Grail, and it's quenching our soul of the real, and once again away from the false, or away from the world, the age of man, as far as our hubris, our ignorance. Speaking of ignorance, it reminds me, if I recall correctly, it's stave 2 of the Christmas Carol, Dickens. It's either stave 2 or stave 3, and it's the ghost of Christmas present. And toward the end of that scene, Ebenezer notices a few extra feet beyond the spirit's robe. He asks the spirit whose feet, and he reveals to Ebenezer the two children of mankind, a little girl and a little boy. It goes something like this, is that this girl is ignorance, this boy is want. Beware of this boy the most, for upon his forehead is doom, unless the writing be erased.
It sounds simple, but it's profound. It's interesting when I read astrological charts. One of the things I look at is Saturn, and Saturn is the planet of necessity. It's the uncompromising teacher. And the Grail seems to operate in the same register. You cannot bypass it, you cannot fake it. And it comes only to those who have been humbled, who've been emptied, who've been undone. I think this is why the wasteland matters, because without wasteland, there's no Grail. And without death of pride, there's no rebirth of truth. There is a cost here in terms of refusal. Here is the peril, as I see it, is that if we ignore the path, cling to pride and division, if we refuse to face the opponent within, then the beast rises. We hollow ourselves out. We risk becoming a species alive in body, but extinct in spirit. So here's the question that I want to put before you. What is the cost, not only personally, but collectively, if we refuse the Grail, if humanity continues to serve the beast?
You mentioned hollow, and that reminds me of Eliot's poem, The Hollow Men. We're empty of spirit. We're
Mm.
stuffed men, full of straw. If you look at the popular culture, I would say for the past 60 years, maybe, if we look at cinema, for instance, and zombie movies, there's a zombie zeitgeist. There's been many movies, TV series. What's the most recent one? The past 2 years, The Last of Us, for instance. That's part of the zeitgeist, the spirit
Mm.
of the age. So, what's a zombie? It's an empty shell, a hollow human being, devoid of soul, meaning, purpose, other than to consume. The zombies we see on the screen, that's what drives them, is consumption. So you were asking, like, what does it mean to go without the Grail? The consequences. We lose our humanity, humus, humility, holy. Unfortunately, tragically today, we are the walking dead. If you look at some of the streets, and I imagine some of this is going on where you are in the UK and other parts of Europe, but it is very evident, tragic in many big city centers, metropolitan areas of the United States today. People who are living on the streets, they're addicted to one or a number of substances. And if you didn't know any better, You'd think that you're on a movie set that's making one of these zombie genres, right? But it's real life. We literally see people who are the walking dead on our streets. And in some cases, we might walk over them. We see them literally killing themselves in public. That's the consequence. That's one example right there. We're in some ways in an open air insane asylum. So, do we want to continue on that path or do we want to turn around away from death and towards life? Politics, science, modern medicine, and pharmaceuticals is no cure for a soul crisis. Those are band-aids. They chase symptoms downstream. We're not looking upstream at the depths. The system, which is mostly that of the machine and the beast, rather than serving corporations and particular political parties. I feel like, at least my lifetime in the United States, that politics is more or less a game of tic-tac-toe, of futility. We have all played tic-tac-toe, I imagine, especially early on in life. We stopped after a short period because we realized it's a game of futility. I would say politics is very similar to that. It's not going to get us anywhere that's meaningful, that's purposeful, that's sustainable and restorative to the soul. And to the point that we heal ourselves, we heal each other, we help to heal the land. But the opposite is true as well. Many societies are not well. If we're paying attention, if we're honest with ourselves, the living planet is suffering as well. The hurt of one is the hurt of all. The earth is on life support as far as the living planet goes. Many of our individual souls, the collective soul, and the anima mundi is on life support. It's all interwoven. This is a seamless, interdependent tapestry. Our responsibility is to be garden tenders. In that way, we restore and we can return back to the garden.
We can look at the peril of it, but I also want to look at the promise of it. There's a cost of saying yes. If we say yes, and it doesn't save us from suffering, I think it consecrates it. It teaches us to embody humility, truth, and courage. It gives us back dignity where division has stripped it away. In your own mind, what is the cost of saying yes to the Grail? What does it demand of the one who bears it? And what might it give back to a species starving for truth?
It might ask everything from us. I would say it requires humbleness. It reminds me the story of Jesus going to the cross. Some people describe it as he was a groom going to his bride. He embraced it. Humility and grace. Approach it with humility and grace. We can embody the Christ consciousness, especially within that particular time in his life. He embraced the end with humility and grace. That's alchemy. It's a form of alchemy, I would say. We can hold on to the sacred, our humanity, or wholeness, or holiness, even at the threshold. So, what's the old saying? The way you do anything is the way you do everything. The way you live is the way you die. Learn how to die before you die. Learning how to die while still alive. Dying of the old and a remembrance, a restoration, a resurrection of the whole, of the good, the beauty, and the true.
Through my life experience, my perception tells me the Grail is not something I seek, it's something that seeks me, seeks us. It arrives as confrontation, it arrives as humility, as death and rebirth. The only question I could pose to myself is, will I recognize it when it comes? This is the eschatological measure. Our endings are also our beginnings. So the peril and the promise stand side by side. The choice is ours.
To do the best that we can and to do what we feel is right in respects to the good, the beauty, and the true. I'm imagining in my mind right now going towards the peak of Mount Doom, Frodo and Samwise Gamgee going through Tolkien's Wasteland. Tolkien experienced the wasteland within the trenches of World War One. He faced head on the machine, the beast, the mechanized warfare of World War One. And I would say his writings was a form of therapy. It was a form of alchemy. It was perhaps even prophetic. He turned his lived experience into myth and perhaps a hope for a resurrection to turn people around. The lessons within the stories of light and shadow. If you look at the two main characters who are bringing the ring up to Mount Doom, if we look at the hobbits as a whole compared to men and dwarves in particular, even the elves, I would say that they were the most humble of all those other types of people. They were the most simple folk. It reminds me once again that the meek shall inherit the earth. Some people might have this idea that meek is slow and dumb and inferior. No, they're humble. Yes, being small hobbits compared to all the other types of people within the world of Tolkien, yes, they're small in stature, but it wasn't so much physically, it was that they saw themselves small within this tapestry of the living world and the cosmos, but they were big in spirit. They were big in the good, the beauty, and the true. And Sam and Frodo really suffered. Frodo had a wound that never truly healed, for instance, but he was willing to bear it and see through what needed to be done. Perhaps we can borrow from that example of Tolkien's story.
I would love to unpack that story and do a deep dive into it. I want to talk about possession in the modern world. Many people think of possession as horned demons or these demons as horned figures. Possession today is not some kind of medieval frenzy, it's the algorithm whispering in our ear, the
Mm.
compulsion to scroll, the addiction to consume, and the ideology that thinks through us. The most terrifying truth is not that possession exists, but that we've normalized it and we call it lifestyle, we call it culture, we call it progress. But when I look closely, who is moving the hand? Who is thinking the thought? Who is choosing the desire? Are we already possessed as a species? If so, what force do you see has taken us? What do you believe is the cost of mistaking possession for freedom?
So, one part of your question is who's behind the curtain?
Sorry, I asked you two questions in one go. It's clear to me we're already possessed as a species. And if that is the case, what force has taken us?
A few things come to my mind is ignorance and want. What did Jung say? For many people, it's not so much that they have thoughts. In many cases, it's more that thoughts have them. If you look at much of the modern world today, culture, one definition of culture I have heard is it's a number of people enacting a myth. So, what is the dominant mythos of much of the modern world today? What's the script? What is being advertised to us? Whether it's the culture of the nation, the culture within academia, the culture within marketing, corporations, politicians, the prophets of today. One example comes to my mind is the 24/7, 365 news media, for instance. And so much of what they're reporting is the economy and politics. Those are the central themes. Maybe you have some things toward the periphery, education, employment, especially nowadays, it's starting to become noticed throughout much of the world, the birth rate, because they're concerned that we might not have enough people to run society and military, for instance. What's driving people? I would say much of the current culture and the mythos and what is being told to us time and time again, what is important, what is real within their framework, how to live your life, That is very left brain, very temporal world orientated, very little of the right brain. There's no mentioning of the sacred, the whole, and the holy. That's a big part of it as far as what is the environment that's driving what's behind the behavior. What mythos are we embodying? What archetypes are we embodying? What mythos are we enacting into the world? Right? Words are downstream of thoughts. Actions are downstream of thoughts. And so much of what's being told to us, propaganda, the incantations of these oracles on the media in particular, in some ways, borrowing from Hebrew, abracadabra, I create as I speak. So what are they speaking and what's being created? If that helps with your question.
If we cannot recognize when we are moved by forces that are not our own, are we still a human species or have we become hosts? What would it take to reclaim our own agency from what moves through us?
You mentioned something just a moment ago, host. Perhaps we are zombies, mindless beings driven by these parasitic ideas. So we don't have agency. We're being driven via the parasite that has poisoned our minds, and in some cases, tragically, poisoned our souls.
One of the things I wrote down was the divider and the fracture. You mentioned the word devil, and that comes from
Greek,
diabolos,
Greek, I believe.
the one who divides. We are fractured everywhere, man from woman, body from soul, human from earth, sacred from ordinary. So the wasteland is not myth, it is the condition of division. The cracked chalice cannot hold water, a fractured humanity cannot carry spirit. So the Grail is the vessel of wholeness, but we live in shards. What do you see as the deepest fracture tearing us apart right now?
As far as a fracture within individuals, within the collective, I would say that's a result, that's an outcome, that's a wound. But within that wound, there's a potential, there's an opportunity where medicine can be applied and healing and wholeness might occur. So the wound can be a threshold opening for the sacred to return, for us to repent and turn back towards life and away from the spiritual death. As far as life, everything that's born at some point dies. So there is entropy, but I'm talking about something that's eternal.
You mentioned wholeness. If wholeness is the true measure of holiness, then what does our current fragmentation say about the sacredness of our age? And what becomes of a species that forgets how to hold itself together?
Right now, what you just said, I recall center cannot hold, things fall apart. Anarchy is loosed upon the world. That was from the ashes of World War I, 1919, when he wrote that, titled The Second Coming. So it's either we embody the dominant present day consciousness, or we turn around and embody Christ consciousness, whole consciousness. Perhaps we can draw ourselves from the hell that we've put ourselves in and return back to the garden. To pull back the veil, apocalypse is to pull back the veil, and perhaps we will have a revelation of what's always been there the whole time. Many of us have refused to see. The kingdom of heaven is upon the land, but men do not see it. Perhaps when we drink, the one verse goes something like this: He who drinks from my mouth shall become as I am, and I am he. So perhaps the Grail also represents Christ consciousness. And to drink from that is to quench the soul and become whole and holy, heal ourselves, help heal others, and also to help heal the land. Many of the symptoms that we're experiencing today, the meta crisis, the tragedy, are downstream consequences from something upstream. If we reinvert the inversion, perhaps what will flow from the upstream downstream will then heal and restore.
Another thing from your essay was about the beast as machine. The beast is not mythic. I see it's mechanical. It doesn't breathe fire, it breathes data. I was thinking about the seven deadly sins and how it transforms the seven deadly sins into the global economy, like pride into self-branding and greed into innovation and lust into marketing and wrath into politics and envy into culture and gluttony into convenience and sloth into spiritual apathy. So the beast thrives not on swords, but on forgetfulness. What I find most chilling is that it doesn't appear as the enemy, but as the savior. It offers ease, comfort, speed, and convenience. If I were Satan, I wouldn't come with horns. I would come with an app.
Yes.
Is technology already the beast, or are we still deluding ourselves that it is neutral?
I would say yes. It's us, or some of us at least,
Mm.
a number of us, a critical mass that is having vast influence. Technology is a tool. Thoughts become things, right? Thoughts can be very constructive, they can be supportive of life, good, beauty, and truth. We have the other side of the coin. The idea, the thought of E equals MC squared. What did that help create? Something very destructive, right? E equals mc squared. Energy equals the mass times speed of light squared, helped to create the atomic bomb. If we turn around and repent from that example, what would it then have done? Rather than evaporating 100,000 people, perhaps it would have helped support life of 100,000 people. That reminds me, there's a Bible verse that goes something like this. If I recall correctly, it's Isaiah 45:7. I, the Lord, create the light and the dark. I, the Lord, create good and evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. So it's all there. Choose. Do we want a little bit more heaven or continue with the current hell? The chalice of the beast, the grail of the beast, toward life or toward death. The inversion of live is evil. That's the thing about the opponent, the divider. It's so in your face. He likes to mock us because he's so prideful. He's so arrogant. It's so apparent if we have our eyes wide open. It's as plain as day. If you're honest and willing to open your eyes and see for what it really is, to look beyond the false, to look beyond the illusion, to look beyond these downstream symptoms, consequences. And I would say that to the point that one is able to do that and see the true, the good, the beauty and truth, and the real, then I would say that the answers, the way to turn around can be pretty clear.
I feel in these conversations, we are serving the Grail. But for people listening, can a human soul truly serve the Grail while feeding daily on the machine?
It's not going to be easy.
Because what becomes of a species that builds a machine larger than its own wisdom?
So the machine is all around us. We're using an aspect of the machine right now. And we can ask ourselves the question like, whatever our thoughts, our words, our actions, who is it serving? What mythos am I living? Is this helping toward the good, the beauty, and the true? Perhaps we can have a framework, a checklist to help guide us in our thoughts, words, and actions. There's no perfection here. I would say perfection only exists after our last exhalation. In the meantime, I would hope that we're doing the best that we can. Once again, go back to the one story example that I brought up a few minutes earlier in our talk. There is going to be a struggle. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be perfect. We saw that within Samwise Gamgee, and we saw that within Frodo Baggins. They were flawed. We saw that within the stories. They had their moments of weakness, but in the end, they held on to the good, to the beauty, to the true.
The Grail is not here to anchor us. I see it as a reminder of what no machine can replicate, the living current of the soul. In Hebrew, sin
Yeah.
means to miss the mark.
Turn around. Try
Yeah.
again.
But to fire your arrow at the wrong target, and this is our tragedy, is that we've aimed our arrows at screens, at status, wealth, at dominance, and we've called it success. But what good is it to hit every target if they were the wrong ones? To my mind, the Grail is the true bullseye. It's the mark of the soul aligned with the source, and everything else is just noise. The question I ask myself is, what does it actually mean in practice to aim for the Grail rather than the world's false targets? And how do I discern the true aim of the soul amidst so much distraction?
I feel what might be helpful, how do we differentiate, right? So if we look at the dominant culture, if we look at the dominant mythos, looking 90 to 180 degrees away from that might help us. Imagine an arrow. And if I'm looking for the very center of the bullseye, after, let's just say 3 shots, arrow shots or so, I keep on going high into the left. My course correction to get more toward the center rather than continuing high into the left is that I'm going to adjust and go a little lower and a little into the right. So if we look at the popular culture, if we look at a lot of figures within the entertainment, turn around, repent, turn away from that trajectory, from that inertia. We learn through contrast. Like the first year of life, the first few years, a lot of times we find out that the only way we have an appreciation for something that's cool and temperate is as a young child, we bumped against a hot stove and we're like, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that again. It's basically a matter of self-organizing, like developmental childhood and our environment. That's an example of self-organization in that context. But imagine applying that idea to the
Mm.
self-organization of the soul.
Humanity's run its mile. And if we continue to miss the mark, what harvest will we reap? However, because I'm an optimist, but if we re aimed our arrows towards wholeness, what new civilization might come into being?
What comes to my mind is Joseph Campbell and his saying that a vital person helps to vitalize. I would say much of the present day, 100 years plus post World War One, 80 years post World War Two, that perhaps we will emerge from the shadow, from the ashes of those two wars, turn away towards the wasteland, turn away from the hollow man, the stuffed man, and return to the sacred, to the vital, to the whole. Imagine humanity having the sacred as the central axis. Imagine humanity having a common sacred narrative we're all living by. I would say, compared to much of the past and the present, that would be more life affirming, moving
Mm.
towards life and away from death. So you have more LIVE rather than EVIL. We would be embodying the second coming. So the second coming can either come through us or the opposite. The contrast to Christ's return is the Antichrist, the anti-life, the anti-Grail.
One of the things your essays about the Grail promotes in me is not what does one seek, but whom does it serve? I think this is the pivotal point of our age. Do we serve the machine or do we serve life? Do we serve the ego or do we serve the whole? The species that serves only itself walks backwards into extinction, and a species that serves life becomes the vessel through which the sacred pours. This is the unflinching demand of the Grail. Because what would it look like if humanity truly chose to serve life as distinct from consuming it? What if the fate of our species hinges on that one question? Whom do we serve? Then what becomes possible if we answer it not just with words, but with the very orientation of our lives? We're a species at an eschatological edge. The peril is possession, fracture, the machine's extinction, not only of body, but of soul. The promise is present, remembrance, wholeness, humility, service. Hell is not waiting, it's here, but so is heaven, spread upon the earth. It's inveigled by our forgetfulness. I see the Grail as the unveiling, the chalice that asks these eternal questions. Whom does it serve? If we remember, the wasteland will bloom again. The choice is ours.
It is, Peter. It is.
As we come to the close of the conversation, do you have any parting words, and where can people find you on Substack?
You mentioned my Substack in the beginning.
Oh, didn't I? Of course.
It's Embody, Grail, Humble, Wasteland.
I'll put that in the show notes.
Thank you, Peter. So we're enacting a story. We've been enacting a story, and we're at a threshold. And so what different story do we want to enact? And once again, Tolkien's coming to mind. And this is something of his that I feel is relative, because I imagine for a lot of people, this is going to be quite challenging, to say the least. But I would say that nothing worthwhile having comes easy. So I'm going to read something from Tolkien. It's like the great stories, Mr. Frodo, ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad has happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it'll shine out the clear. I know folks in those stories had lots of chances of turning back. Only they didn't. They kept going because they were holding on to something. That there's something good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. So Sam mentions that people didn't turn around. They were on a path of repentance because they turned around from death and they were turning towards life. And perhaps we can borrow from the words of Tolkien.
Beautiful. Words come to mind are the chalice of remembrance. We've walked a long road together today through shadow and fracture, through the machine's seduction and the peril of forgetting. And yet here we are at a still point where the Grail waits, silent and unyielding. I see the Grail does not flatter. It does not bend to convenience. It asks one question, and one question only: whom does it serve? This is the Saturn of the soul, the weight we cannot escape, the invitation we cannot refuse without consequence. Because if we continue to serve the beast, we hollow out our humanity. We walk the path of extinction, and our species becomes a footnote in the ruins of time. But like you say, if we turn, if we remember, if we dare to serve the whole, even here in this wasteland, the green shoot rises, the water flows, and the earth remembers herself through us. So the peril and the promise are one. We are the deciding factor, not kings, not priests, not machines, not politics, but you, me, each one of us. The Grail is not hidden. It's waiting in the marrow of our being. I want to leave with this one reflection from your essay, which is the Grail is not what we seek, it is what seeks us. And the measure of our lives will be found in whether we answer or not.
We are the ones we've been waiting for.
Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful dialogue.
Thank you, brother, and likewise.